Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Careers at the End of the World. It's me, your host, Jenn Walker Wall, founder of Work Wonders Careers, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about these themes of death, loss, and rebirth in your career. Now, you might be thinking maybe death and loss and rebirth are too heavy for a career related podcast. But I have been doing a lot of thinking about these themes because they've really emerged in my work with clients over the last few years. Now, I have a small personal story here to share with you before I just dive in. I promise it's going to get us right back to the point. So bear with me here. I have been on a journey from becoming a black thumb, a notorious plant killer, a place where plants come to die. That's the kind of reputation I have for keeping plants alive, okay? I have been working really hard to become a plant mom. I'm really at this point more like a helicopter plant mom, okay? And I realize that there are some parallels that show up for me in my plant mom journey that often show up for clients that they will name. One is I didn't realize how much work it was to really maintain plants. And yes, I do have some actually pretty easy plants to take care of, but some require more care than others. And in order to have them thrive and not just exist or get stagnant or forgotten by me, there's a lot of work involved. Like I am constantly feeding these plants, watering these plants. Really, I'm removing them and putting them in bigger pots because they're running out of room to grow. And I don't think I realized just how much attention some of these plants would really need to stay alive. Right now, I even have a plant ICU where there are some like touch and go situations where I have to give some plants a lot of extra love, like more time and attention than I really ever anticipated. And now that I have more conversations with plant owners, I realize like that's pretty normal. Like, yeah, you have to put some work into it. It takes some regular attention and it's not uncommon, right? If plants thrive in your care, it's probably because you pay really close attention to them. You're giving them everything they need and not too much of what they don't. And when things start to look a little sideways and they get a little droopy, you pay extra attention to them. I have this one of my favorite plants. I sent a picture and I snapped it to my sister, who's the green thumb in our family. And I said, this one is growing and it's splitting off and splitting in two kind of, and I wasn't sure if it was a good thing or where it was going. And she said to me, she couldn't quite tell what kind of plant it was, and I didn't know. I just bought it at a vintage vintage sale. But she said to me, you're going to want to prune those leaves and see if the plant blossoms. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to take leaves off this plant. Like this was a tiny little baby plant when I had it, first got it. And like, I don't want to take anything off it. Like it took forever to get to this point. But then I looked at those leaves and I was like, they are kind of weighing it down. They're not brown. They weren't even browning necessarily, but they weren't like that vibrant green that I think we're going for here. And so I finally took her advice and I started pruning some of the leaves. And it was really painful for me to do that because I just worked so hard to like get to this point where my plants even had leaves. And all of this like made me think about things I've heard clients say over the years. Like everyone else's job search and career growth and transition looks so easy. Why isn't it easy for me? I feel like other people don't experience these career tower moments. Why is this happening to me? Or I worked so hard to get my career this far. I don't want to have to give anything up in order to make a transition. There are some parallels here with plants, right? And at least my own experience here, because it does look like everyone else has an easier time keeping plants alive, where it's become my second job. And it's a good reminder, I think, that stability and growth and transformation are a little incompatible some of the times, maybe most of the time. Isn't there a real reluctance most of the time to prune the leaves of our career, to relinquish domains of expertise we've acquired, seniority we've acquired, salary and benefits we've acquired, trust and autonomy that we've acquired. Like, who wants to give that up? That's a really hard thing to give up. And yet, there are other things we often find ourselves wanting to do, things that catch our interest that we weren't expecting, or an interest we've had for a really long time that it's time to nurture and develop. And something we don't talk about a lot when it comes to career transitions is that in order to create a process or pursue a process that has the potential to generate new opportunities, there will be change and, in fact, loss as a requirement of any process like that. You will lose comfort and familiarity, expertise and seniority, identities attached to functions that you may no longer really want to pursue. You might also be thinking about the loss of time and energy attached to something like a career transition or a job search. You don't even know what's on the other side. Maybe there is something better. Maybe there isn't something better. I hear people in transition, people on the precipice of transition, having a really hard time accepting the losses that come with a career transition, even when it's fully of your own choosing. One way that's been helpful for me to think about these losses is to think of them as offerings that we're making to usher in newer versions of ourselves, new opportunities for ourselves. And that's really where this latest workshop, Death, Loss, and Rebirth, turning career transitions into transformation, has really come from. There's a lot that goes into career pivots, and even just a job change is still something that requires a lot of uprooting, a lot of time, a lot of energy. I've spent 99.999% of the last 10 and a half, 11 years talking about the tactics and strategies involved in career change, transition, job searching. But in such a difficult job market and in such challenging times and contexts, something I can't ignore right now is the internal experience of navigating and pursuing change. And whether that internal experience is helping you move forward, or if it's holding you back and making this process a lot slower than it needs to be, right? Like, all this resistance to loss can be a huge barrier for professionals in transition to overcome. And right now, I would say even stability looks hard enough, right? Never mind growth and transformation. I read this really excellent book over the summer. It's called Death Nesting: The Heart-Centered Practices of a Death Doula. And there's so much in there about providing care to someone who is nearing the end of their life, and as well as their family. And there's so many helpful concepts and reminders from this book that I think can actually help support people who are in transition, who are letting go of one career and trying to turn the page and move forward. We have this tendency, I'm going to guess that it's cultural, that in order to make things happen, we just work harder and harder and harder. If you've ever come to any of my workshops or listened to any other episode of this podcast, you know, like, I just don't buy into that. And I believe that loads of patience and self-compassion is really where we need to be. And so this book kind of reinforced that for me and gave me some like very concrete ways to think about supporting ourselves and each other when we're in these liminal spaces, right? When we've got like one foot out the door, but we're not quite sure where we're going. And by the way, like, no knowledge or expertise on astrology or tarot is going to be necessary. We're operating at a real high level, at an archetypal level. It's really not necessary at all that you know astrology, that you know tarot. Don't even worry about that. We'll be guiding people through some prompts and exercises and opportunities to kind of engage with these concepts, but it's going to be at a real basic level. To give some examples of sort of how I think about using astrology and tarot in very basic, simple ways that are accessible to all. Let's say you are having a particularly hard time in your current work situation. We often refer to like these unexpected or big changes or losses or upheavals as tower moments, right? Because the tower card so often represents exactly that. If we think about the storytelling arc of the tarot, we think about the Fool being the first card and the overarching story being the Fool's journey. I often like to not just pull tarot cards, but if I pull a tarot card that I don't like to pull, I sometimes like to think about energy from the tarot that can help me recover, address, or sit through, like just experience a difficult moment like that. When I think about the Tower card, I also always think about the Star card. The Star card represents hope. And if you're going through it right now, it might be just a really helpful and simple reminder to think about those cards or those experiences as a pair. There's no doubt that you've lost something valuable, lost something that you worked hard to get. But also, what does that free you up for? Now, I love working with astrology too. If you look to the second house, that typically represents your values and your livelihood. And if you look across that on the wheel, right, you will see the eighth house, which represents hidden things, investments, death, and transformation. These houses are opposite one another and they're sister signs. Okay. So traditionally, the second house is ruled by Taurus, and traditionally, the eighth house is ruled by Scorpio, and they're sister signs. And I see the relationship between these things in my work. So often, when I'm meeting with people, their job search and career transition is, in fact, something that is hidden. The transformation that they are undergoing is not necessarily super visible until they get the new job and they get to post about it on LinkedIn, right? Our values and our lives as they evolve are going to necessitate these sort of transformations and deaths of, parts of our life or eras that are just not meant to, take us through all the way to retirement. In some ways, when I look at these houses and think about these themes and the relationship that these concepts have with one another, it's very obvious to see that, like, yes, if you want to see changes in your second house, how you, make money, how you earn a living, you have to go through these other things, these less visible things, the death of things and the transformation of things. And not for nothing, but we are very, very, very close to Scorpio season. And that's not an accident. So we did schedule this workshop about a week before the new moon in Scorpio. And for those of you who are really in some kind of career transition, maybe you've unexpectedly dealt with a layoff, perhaps you have been stuck and not able to move forward in a process one way or another. If you're having a hard time letting go of previous opportunities or connections or work that you just feel attached to one way or another. Really feel like Scorpio energy is some of the best energy. I know a lot of people will look to Capricorn energy for like career planning and, because Capricorns always have their act together, and they traditionally rule the 10th house, which is often associated with our careers or our reputation. Often that's where people have their MC. But I really like working with Scorpio energy because I think it invites us to really recognize the depth. Like if you have Scorpio placements, you have a lot of depth. You have the ability to feel things really, really deeply. And I think a lot of people I work with, A, have a lot of Scorpio placements for sure, but B, also like feel things deeply, take their career seriously. I don't have people who, take their career willy-nilly signing up for career coaching. That's not how it works. Scorpio has everything to do with transformation and regeneration. So being able to come into this workshop, participate in some guided reflection, do a little planning, do some cord cutting for people who are ready to transition out of a feeling of stagnancy or stuckness and who want to improve a skill set and knowledge base that will help them transform their inner and outer experience in this process. So here's a little bit about like what we have planned for the workshop. One, we're going to do quiet guided reflection. This workshop is a retreat night. And so one of the ways that's different than a workshop is like in a workshop, I do a lot more talking. I tell people what to do so we get to a result here. But a retreat night is going to be a lot more open ended and malleable for you. So, what I will do is I will offer quiet guided reflection for about the first 20 or 25 minutes. Now, the first time I hosted a retreat, I sent everyone the prompts ahead of time. And I said, look, I'm going to open up the first 20 minutes and I'll be holding space for folks who maybe don't get a chance to do this work ahead of time. And I didn't think actually anyone would show up. I assumed everyone would want to complete it on their own time. 100% of the people who signed up for the workshop and the retreat actually showed up to do the quiet guided reflection. And it was such a good reminder to me that one of the reasons that people's careers aren't exactly where they would like them to be is because it's really hard to carve out the time to do that. It's really hard to carve out time to be reflective. It's hard to call out the time to take the right kind of action. So, this quiet guided reflection, we'll start with it, but we will also revisit it throughout the content of the retreat day. And it's such a good time to really think about how these themes are showing up for you. What do we want to release? What are we actively calling in? You're going to have some time to think through that. So, if you've struggled to think through that on your own, join us for that. We'll also be talking about how to create an environment that supports our transition. We'll talk about exploring resources that will make an inherently discomforting process a little bit more comfortable. And this will be a lot of wisdom from the death doula work that I was very inspired by. And then, of course, we will be offering some practices and rituals for things like cutting ties, moving beyond fear and frustration. I want you to be able to leave this workshop and have something other than work on my job search on your to-do list. I want you to have other ways of metabolizing the challenge of the moment, the losses that you might be experiencing, and how to turn that into something that is fertile soil for what you actually want. Let me say one more thing about our retreat night. About a year ago, I signed up for a workshop, and it was a virtual workshop on Zoom. It was not really work related. It was just for personal development, and I was really nervous about going. I was feeling very anxious. I have not been to like a non-work related event in a very long time. And this was an area that was like pretty new to me. So I didn't think I had necessarily a lot of wisdom to offer. I was just feeling very green, very much like a novice. And I went to the workshop, which was on Zoom, and it was one of my favorite experiences because we did not have to talk the whole time. It was the most introvert friendly webinar workshop, like Zoom workshop situation I've ever participated in. We got reflection prompts, we got information. At times it was like a little bit more like a lecture. And then there was a host who allowed us to submit questions via the chat and who asked them out loud on our behalf. I wish I saw more workshops in this format because it was so lovely. It was very relaxing. I was able to really take in the experience of the content rather than feel anxious about participating. And it's really given me a lot to think about as a facilitator of experiences like this because we're bringing people together who do not know each other and asking, in some cases, it'll feel like an ask to share things that you may not really want to surface in front of a group of strangers. So, I do want to say I have really started to pay attention to how to make these experiences, in this case, our retreat night on death, loss, and rebirth in your career, a lot easier for people to participate in. I assume many people will be coming after a day of work. It's going to be dark because it's dark early now. I know people will be fatigued. I know people won't know each other. So please come and know that if you want to keep your camera off, you can. We will not be doing formal introductions or anything like that. I might have people say hello to each other in the chat or say a little bit about who they are in the chat, but I'm not going to go around and have folks introduce themselves. So it's not the best for a networking event. And while we'll be pausing periodically for people to share thoughts and questions, there's no pressure to participate like that. No questions, no problem. So I just want to say that because I know it's kind of a big ask to invite people to a Zoom room full of people they don't know to talk about things like death and loss and rebirth. So please know that really we will be facilitating a lot of work that we plan to have folks do individually. Now, as of the time of this podcast being posted, the retreat night is going to be right on top of us. It is Wednesday, October 23rd. I will be recording our retreat night and sharing that with people who register and cannot attend live. I've had significant interest for people who can't attend live but still want the content. So I will be making that available for a set amount of time post the live version. And if you haven't purchased tickets yet, please do. I'm going to include the link in show notes for this episode. We would love to have you join us. If you can imagine yourself wanting to take advantage of the Scorpio new moon, a fresh start, even though it's like the middle of October or middle to end of October, if you're feeling stuck, if you're not where you want to be, if you're trying to make peace with your circumstances and reduce the resistance so that you can move forward, this is going to be a good retreat night for you. So check out the show notes. You can also come over to workwonderscareers.com, check out the events page. We link to the sales page for the retreat night right there. And we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you bring your energy into our retreat night on Wednesday and help everyone move forward. These are tough times. So as you know, I think we should be doing this collectively and we should be doing it with loads of self-compassion. Now I have to go water my plants and check on my plants in ICU. Nothing needs to be pruned because I have been doing that much more proactively. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope to see you later this week. We'll talk to you soon.